Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Madhava ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Wer könnte vor Lutz und Kishorikun übersetzen? Oder machst du das schon, Rosmarita? Lutz, könntest du vielleicht bei Kishorikun gehen? Ich denke, everybody else understands English, or just English. Shravi. I don't know if so many more people are coming, so would you mind just to move here today? I can see Nicole and I can see Alicia, but otherwise it's like I'm just talking to the window. Now come, it's okay, yeah. Okay. Und Devaki auch, du kannst auch so hier. Okay, so everybody who needs a translation has a translation. Very good. So we also have our two little bhaktas here. We have Charu and Murari, free, and Suchandra. So they, we allow them, of course, to stay, and they may be a little disruptive, but it's okay because it's okay. Charu, you at least try to concentrate. Let Suchandra be. He's little. Let him be. But Chungi, let him. It's okay. It's okay. Okay. So we begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Nam Namam Skritanam Chega Narottamam Devim Saraswati. Hare Krishna. So, dear devotees, today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, the 4th canto, chapter 1, text 58 to 59. Just do a quick check. And our Rosemary has kindly written up verse 59. I will just quickly read text 58. It does not have a purport, so naturally we move on to the next text, which does. Okay. Evasura kanastata bhagavanta vapustuto la bhavaloke yayatur achito gandhamaranam. So the translation of this verse is, Maitreya said, O Vidura, vast the demigods worshipped with prayers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing as the sage Naranarayana. The Lord glanced upon them with mercy and then departed for Gandhamadana hill. Okay, text 59, which is written on the board. Let us do line by line. Tavimo vai bhagavato, tavimo vai bhagavato, hareyam savya ihagato, harayam savihagato, paravayaya cha bhuvaha, paravayaya cha bhuvaha, Krishna yadu kurudvaho, Krishna yadu kurudvaho. Tavimo vai bhagavato, hariyam shavihagato, bharavyaya cha bhuvaha, Krishna yadu kurudvaho. Tavimo vai bhagavato, hariyam shavihagato, bharavyaya cha bhuvaha, Krishna yadu kurudvaho. Tavimo vai bhagavato, hariyam shavihagato, bhagavaya chavayo. Ladies, please. Mataji. Tavimo vai bhagavato, hariyam savihagato, bharavayaya cha bhuvaha, Krishna yadu kurudvaho. Tavimo vai bhagavato, hariyam shavihagato, bharavayaya cha bhuvaha, Krishna yadu kurudvaho. Tavimo vai bhagavato, hariyam shavihagato, bharavayaya cha bhuvaha, Krishna yadu kurudvaho. Tavimo vai bhagavato, Krishna Yadu Kurudvaho. Tavimo Vai Bhagavato. Sorry. Hare Yamsha Vihagato. Paraviyaya Cha Bhuvaha. Krishna Yadu Kurudvaho. Thank you. Tau, both. Imau, these. Vai, certainly. Bhagavata, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare, of Hari. So, part and parcel expansion. Iha, here in this universe. Agato, has appeared. Paravayaya, for mitigation of the burden. Cha, and Bhuvaha, of the world. Krishna, the two Krishnas, Krishna and Arjuna. Yadu Kuru, Udvaho, who were the best of the Yadu and Kuru dynasties respectively. Yadu. Yeah, sorry, it's long. Okay, translation. That Nara Narayan Rishi, who is a partial expansion of Krishna, has now appeared in the dynasties of Yadu and Kuru in the forms of Krishna and Arjuna, respectively, to mitigate the burden of the world. Purport. Narayana is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Nara is a part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Thus, the energy and the energetic together are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maitreya informed Vidura that Nara, the portion of Narayana, has appeared in the family of the Kurus, and that Narayana, the plenary expansion of Krishna, had come as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with the purpose of delivering suffering humanity from the pangs of material burdens. In other words, Narayan Rishi, who was now present in the world in the forms of Krishna and Arjuna. Again, the translation. That Narayan Rishi, who is a partial expansion of Krishna, has now appeared in the dynasties of Yadu and Kuru in the forms of Krishna and Arjuna respectively to mitigate the burden of the world. Very nice. Amakyantamarandasya kinanasalakaya chakshunamilitamyana tasmai shukrave namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Shtapitamyena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Dadati Sapadandikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shiva Sati Gaura Bhakta Vinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you very much for those of you who came. Our Vedasara Prabhu asked if it's just a ladies class. No, it's not just a ladies class. It is open to everybody. However, we like to encourage more participation, particularly of the Matajis, especially once a week, because sometimes ladies are more shy. However, I'm very grateful that we have some Prabhus also here. At the moment that we try to be an instrument of Srimad Bhagavatam, I hope that it is not really a question of being a Mataji or Prabhu at this moment. So, Hare Krishna. I'm a little excited about this verse. I have a special request, which is that those who are here, if you must go during, for any purpose before the end of the lecture, please could you at least listen online later, because we cover because this verse, the translation and the purport, talks about the burden of the world. Later on, Prabhupada describes it as the pangs of material burden. So the title of this lecture is, What is Suffering and How to Overcome It? If you're only here for the first part, then you'll just get stuck on suffering. That's why it's very good to listen to the next part. No, I don't know if you've had it, but I've had it with the children. I've listened to a part which describes the misery of material nature, but I couldn't listen to the end of the lecture. So the rest of the day, I'm just sort of dwelling in material misery, or, this focus is there. Here in the purport, it says that the Lord appears to mitigate the suffering of the living beings. Explain the word mitigate is to resolve or dissipate or to get rid of our sufferings as living beings. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that the Lord appears with the purpose of delivering suffering humanity from the pangs of material burdens. Pangs. How can I describe pangs? Dean, you're also a good English speaker. Pang. It's like, you also can get a hunger pang. I'm so hungry. And it's like when you're miserable, it's like, I'm so miserable, in this moment. So, why am I a bit excited? Today in English we call this Charu Murari, listen, and leave Vedasara just to do his thing. You can copy what he's doing if he asks, but otherwise you leave him, yeah? Okay. So, and if you're hungry, you have your snacks for the back. Sorry, that's live, huh? This is how we mitigate the suffering of children, with prasadam. Okay, so why did God give us suffering? Huh? Do some of us wake up? Why? Why did he give it? No, questions that answers later on. Not quite soon, but not yet, Vedasara. Why did he give us suffering? Sometimes we wake up with this question, and sometimes it happens also as devotees. I have to learn to slow down. When I'm excited, I speed up. Why am I suffering? Well, I'm a devotee now. Why do I need to suffer? What is the problem now? Today is Good Friday in English. It's Karfreitag. I don't think it means the same as good, but as a child in school, when they explained to me the crucifixion of Jesus, which is what today represents in his death, I was like, oh my God. And everybody else was very sort of neutral face. And I was like, but Jesus got killed, And then they put stakes through his hands. In most pictures that you will find in England, and maybe also in sort of the colder regions of Europe, you just see Jesus on the cross, but you don't see any blood coming out where they nailed his hands. In Italy, apparently it's different. Huh? There the art shows the blood and everything, which is actually probably more true to life of what it happened. But as usual, we have a little bit of, oh yes, the Lord was crucified today. Okay. I also, interestingly enough, read that the color to wear today in Christianity is red, to represent the blood that Jesus gave in this time, to also save mankind at that time. That was the point. So very interestingly, we have a verse today which speaks about the Lord who appeared. Rosemary, wave your hand when I'm too fast, okay? I can barely see you because you have this beautiful strand of light exactly on you. But it's very heavenly, so to say. But I can feel myself because there are many points. Because to understand how to overcome suffering, we have to understand what it is a little bit. Huh? Everyone says, I know what it is to suffer. Why you ask me this question? But still, Satyananda Swami and also Krishna Kshetra Swami, we have an older disciple of Krishna Kshetra Swami here, have spoken recently, especially in the last year or two, about, I think Krishna Kshetra Swami uses this term active reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Satyananda Swami talks about the Srimad Bhagavatam in terms of how can we access what's inside. For many years, I came to class. I was feeling good. I was told, go to class. And then somebody may say, good class. And I'll be like, okay, it was a good class. And occasionally somebody would say, well, what did they speak about? I was like, Krishna. Something to do with Krishna. Something, somewhere. Sometimes if I was honest, I'd be like, I didn't really understand what the purport or the text was about. And one carries on in this way. However, to really, if I say to you, Shravi, brush your teeth, you're like, of course I brush my teeth. Why are you telling me such a thing? Of course I brush my teeth. But you actually understood the reason why and the reason we have this. With the Srimad Bhagavatam, it has so much information inside that we should try to take a little bit with us, a little bit of something. So therefore, often the classes I give are a little bit practical because that's my way of going through this process which is recommended, which is suggested by Satchidananda Swami, which is first you hear, so we've just heard. Then we reflect a little bit, which we will do together, and then later on we can apply what we've heard. So now we hear that the Lord came, as well as Jesus, to mitigate the suffering. Now, what types of suffering? I will go through the suffering because I don't want everyone dwelling in suffering so much. From the many passages in the Srimad Bhagavatam, so I come from Srimad 4, but it's also, I think, in the Bhagavad Gita, there are many different reasons for suffering. So we have birth, death, old age, and disease. And we have the three, I don't know if you can see me here, because suffering. We have these three terms. Yeah, will it? Oh yes, it stops. 3 terms of suffering. So the first one is called Adya Atmika. So this is suffering due to the mind and body. Okay, then we have Adi Bhautika, so suffering due to other living beings, yeah? So it could be other humans, could also be you got bitten by a mosquito, like this. And then the last one is Adidaivika, suffering due to natural events caused by the demigods. So natural events, yeah, like what's a natural event which is a disaster? Earthquake. Oh, both at earthquake. Charu? Volcano erupting, oh? That's quite a disaster. Hurricane. Tsunami, many suffering. Okay. So, I wanted that we make it practical. So at the beginning, the idea was, I hope this works, that we have an example of each of these. Then we will talk a little bit of why we suffer, and then we will have practical solutions at the end. So, somebody, if they have a really pressing suffering, they can. But in the temple, one suffering of the mind is, I've got too much to do. It's from the outside world too, but I've got too much. It's too much. It's all too much. Too much. Cannot do it. Vedasara doesn't understand this, but What song? Too much. It could also be for the body, It can be literally too much, sort of. Okay. Problems with other living beings. We could talk about mosquitoes and being bitten or like this, but let's talk about devotee conflict. Thought we just go for it, today. There's just a few of us, devotee. And the last one, because I was hoping we would have a Sankirtan devotee here, maybe we have a second one here, is distress from extremely cold weather. So, my last one is, how do you distribute books during the marathon in December at -10 degrees? how to distribute. Imagine if you go to Australia during the marathon time, it's hot, so you don't have this problem. It's fine. But how do they do it in Germany? Distribute books at -10. Got a bit excited, you see, with how many bits of paper I have. So when I asked the question, God, why do we suffer? Vedasara put his hand up. So now I allow you. Why are we suffering?
Because we are in ignorance and illusion of our true nature and what really brings happiness. Du hast auch eins. Tut eins? Vielleicht ist es gemutet.
Jaru, I think your microphone is meant to be for traveling. Is it working? Oops, there, Jaru, sorry. Is it on?
No, it's not.
It's on mute.
Okay, can I borrow it, Charu? No, it's not actually. It's Nicole. It's for the online viewers. They won't hear you. I mean, if you don't speak on a microphone.
Because of karma.
Because what?
Karma. Karma?
Karma.
Yeah, because of
I thought it was a
karma
karma
we're
munu. Karma. Oh, yeah, very good. Can you elaborate?
Because of things we did in the past, and they are now fruitive, and we get now what we did in the past. So if we acted not good, then we suffer.
Oh, so naughty us. Oh, sorry. We may have done something bad. Okay. Before Vedasara, somebody else put their hand up somewhere. Why are we suffering? Why are we suffering? Vedasara, who looks like a very happy devotee, knows why we suffer. Murari, du kannst auch in Deutsch sprechen. Murari spricht Deutsch. Nicht so viel Englisch.
Tsunami.
Huh? To tsunami. Yeah, if a tsunami comes here, then we're in trouble, oh? Tsunami.
Wasserloch.
Ein Wasserloch.
Okay, here we talk about actually, what's gone on, yeah? Like this. Now we're talking why, the deeper reasons behind this.
Can I?
You can say another one, Vedasara, please.
Due to attachment to material things.
Due to attachment.
Can I say another one?
Yep.
Uncontrolled senses.
It's quite heavy, Vedasara. Oh, wow, all these things. Uncontrolled senses. Brian. Oh, sorry, give him to Brian and then you can speak after Charu.
Expectations, unfulfilled expectations.
Unfulfilled expectations. Charu, sorry, yes.
And
Speak to them into the microphone.
and when you're very stressed.
When you're very stressed, yes. Stress is not good. Charu unfortunately doesn't know from himself, but by seeing his parents. When we are attached to material things, so this is almost, we have all of the, so to say, the negatives. Let's try, because I find when we talk on the subject of, I stand up still because the microphone's on me. Charu, put your microphone on mute because it's very loud, or give it to Vedasara. He makes it on mute for you. when we are talking of suffering, and when we just speak of suffering, in that moment, on a emotional or mental platform, even physically, we sort of go a little bit like, wow, it's like, what do you say? My senses are uncontrolled. I'm in ignorance. It's like a whole, and then you're like, but it just said it's too much for me. That hurt my foot, by the way. Yeah, but it hurt my foot. But what do you mean? Is it because I'm attached? What are you trying to say? What does it mean? So sometimes my point is that it practical life needs a little bit more deeper. You know, like if you tell me I've got too much to do and it's because of my karma, I'm just confused. I'm just completely confused. Murari, was willst du sagen? Here's another disaster, I think, a natural one.
Gefährliche Sachen zum Beispiel.
So he says dangerous things, for example.
Müll geht in Wasser.
Aha, like rubbish going into the water, like oil. They learned this, I think, in school or kindergarten, that then the birds are drowning. That's not very nice for us to see. Okay, and that could be karma or people just dumping their stuff. So at this point, let's turn what we have as apparent negatives, because we get into modern spiritual ways, and let's try to turn it into a positive, or not subvert what it is. So we're attached to material things. What should we be attached to? And my toe is still hurting. Imagine this, that's suffering. Charu, give the microphone over to Vedasara. He's attached to the microphone. Because you have to lose your attachment. No, because Vedasara needs to speak right now. What, if we are attached to material things, what is a positive? What should we be attached to?
We should be attached to acting in our true nature, in being a humble servant of the Lord.
Acting on our true nature. Aha.
To serve Krishna.
Wait a minute. Serving, we didn't have that. Where's one we didn't have, which was, I am in charge. Isn't that modern day talk? I'm in charge of my life. I make it. I will control my destiny. And you know, you're saying being a servant of
Could
Krishna.
also be ignorance and illusion. I'm the controller.
Servant, but you're talking about servant.
Yeah.
Being a servant of Krishna. Will you ever hear a politician maybe say that we have to serve the Lord? Maybe in these modern days. You might have the Indian Prime Minister saying that, but generally not. We should learn to serve ourselves, or? No, Charu? No, serve Krishna. Okay. Uncontrolled senses, what do you mean? I mean, I don't go out drinking anymore. I mean, many years ago.
When you don't control your inner enemies like lust or hatred, and you just follow your sense perception, you see something, you want it, and then you take it rather than reflecting.
Okay, that's good. Okay, somebody else. How can we control our senses? Okay, Charu, for this answer, how can we control our senses?
Maybe when, like, we try not to think on what we like really want.
What should we think of instead? What could we think?
Krishna.
He knows the shastric answers. It's very good that you're here, Charu. Let's go a little bit more into this. Brian, what can we do to control our senses? Can you give him a microphone quickly? Sorry for that.
Be disciplined.
Be disciplined. Be disciplined. Give me an example of how we could be disciplined, please, if you don't mind.
Having a stricter routine, like waking up early in the morning.
So our sadhana, can I write sadhana?
Right.
Wake up early. Oh, sudden. Yesterday, I was, like many days in the temple, I was running around. Then my alarm went off at 3:45. And I was like, no, I'm not getting up. I know many of, I'm not getting up. I'm not getting up. Too tired. Everything hurts. I'm not getting up. And then there was a little voice that says, oh, come on, yeah, it'll feel better when you go. Come on, And then the body just sort of got up, like this. And then the second was, and it's so nice when Charu also comes. Charu, you're very noisy with the microphone. Thank you. So, like, it was, the mind said, no. But then another part said, no, come on, like, it's going to help. You're not that tired. Because there are times where you're just absolutely exhausted and you have to be realistic. But it was not that bad, So this is it, sadhana, wake up early. This helps. Because in that moment, Ramananda often speaks as we wake up, we're in mode of like ignorance. But asleep, huh? You want to talk about ignorance, huh? Vedasara, come talk about ignorance.
I just wanted to add to uncontrolled senses, acting with intelligence.
Acting with intelligence? What's intelligence?
To know the cause and effect of our actings and to perfect them. To try to adjust one's actions that the outcome is the most prosperous for everyone.
Very nice. Okay. Prosperous. Yes, Charu, can you give to... Okay, Murari, very quickly.
Ich wollte sagen, Krishna steuert unser Körper.
Krishna controls our body, he said. Oh, controls our body. Wow. Oh, wow. That was very deep, Murari. Krishna is controlling our body. Wow, okay, give to Nicole. Krishna is in charge. Krishna is a controller, okay, Murari? Hast du das selber ausgedacht? Denkt? Ja. Wirklich? Wow. Nein, oh, Vedasara hat gesagt. From where? From wem hast du das? Daddy said this. Very good, very good. Okay, give Nicole.
I just wanted to add something, how to control the senses, how it is easier. It is to follow in the footsteps of the acharyas.
Acharyas.
To follow their instructions and to surround yourself with self-realized souls and also with devotees to create a surrounding which is nourishing and which helps to
nourishing.
To nourish, yeah. To create good qualities inside, yeah. So the surrounding also is, and to follow in the footsteps. Yeah.
Very nice. Can I speak a little on following the footsteps of Acharya? Because we have this one that Nicole spoke of earlier, which is we are sufferers of our karma. And I think most of us have heard that story from Prabhupada, where I think someone was in the kitchen and they cut their finger quite badly. And Prabhupada was known to say some things that I'm paraphrasing, so not exact words, that you're lucky, from your karma, it could have been your whole arm. But because of following this process of devotional service, it was just a finger. So when we are following this process of devotional service, when we hear from the acharyas, they tell us, we only had some part of that reaction. That was heavy enough for us, but just some part of it. Only a part. Before I came to Simhachalam, I was a manager in a charity for 5 years in a nice part of London, Barnet. And the amount of suffering, I mean, we're talking about killings and rape and all sorts of horrific health problems. You know, like what the modern day leprosy, you know, conditions called lupus, things where the ends of the fingers are falling off, all sorts of stuff I saw. And there's motor neuron syndrome, where basically you stop being able to function parts of your body. There was one lady I met, but due to modern technology, she could talk by moving some part of her chin, which triggered the computer, and she could say something. So it was nice, but it's like you're trapped then. I really, coming from quite a protected, more or less Vaishnava background, for me, I didn't really get suffering until I went into the stories of people who had directly experienced it, to really understand that extreme level of suffering which you cannot get out of. Or being a homeless person in the West is no joke. In India you can street out, but it's no joke. You end up with frostbite and things like this, even, you know, in such conditions. So things like this, where one understands it was a higher level of suffering. And really, as devotees, some devotees, of course, we go through some not things, but I never heard the high level that I experienced there in this so-called nice part of London as this. So one can really understand that maybe Krishna does take quite some suffering away. Vedasara?
Can I continue with ignorance and illusion?
You can talk about it, but hopefully not continue.
No, with the points that...
Yes, sorry, my joke.
Develop transcendental knowledge.
Oh, I was waiting for this. Transcendental knowledge. Okay.
And purification of one's existence.
Purification of one's existence. What do you mean by this?
There are inner and outward purificational processes, and
purification of one's existence. Wow.
Like Vaishnava etiquette, or how to deal with eating, or...
Do you mean like from nectar of instruction, not eating too much, not eating too little, or more Ayurvedic, balancing what you need? What do you mean with eating?
More like...
Offering, for sure.
Coming from this tamagun into sattvagun, like washing the mouth after eating, like not touching those things. But this is also a point, what you mentioned.
When one goes into Vaishnava etiquette, it can go very long. I once sat in a seminar in England. I was quite new into the Vaishnava circles on, I think, Pujari worship. I was so scared afterwards. Because he said, actually, if you follow the proper cleaning prescriptions, then you may not leave the bathroom for an hour or two. You know, you could just stay there the whole time. I was like, oh my God, I got no chance, yeah? But some parts, like washing the mouth, some basic things one can take on. Okay.
Chanting Hare Krishna.
Chanting Hare Krishna. I put it here, but we take it over. Okay, so due to Vedasara and other comments, we are now moving on to the next part. I will just say a little bit before we go over to that part. We understood that we have some suffering and some reasons behind it. Just looking at what Prabhupada writes directly on this, these are points that we've read and also understood. One of the main things that he says as our constitutional reason for suffering is forgetting Krishna. Yeah, in this moment that we suffer, and it's happened to many times, I'm not thinking of Krishna at that time. Also this identification with the body. I am the body, I am the mind. And I can say it a million times, but someone will be like, oh, Gopi Gita is there. Prabhupada says, you don't see me actually. and I don't see you actually. Because actually we are spirit soul, which is so tiny that we cannot see, right? At the time, he says, of death, we can understand. No longer that I'm not the body, because it's no longer moving. But normally in our daily functions, we relate to people based on the body. He also describes it as our bodies have two coverings, shirt and coat. So some is the gross body, and then we also have the subtle body. So the gross body, which one can see, and the subtle body made of mind, intelligence, and ego. There's two levels of suffering. But actually somebody who has transcendental knowledge, or who is a jnani and who understands that I am not this body, he says is a wise person, that I am the soul. And it was always a little bit out of my concept of understanding. I'm not the body. So then, but I can't see you. He also describes we want to see God, but we cannot even see Shravi properly. I cannot see your soul. How will I see God with these eyes? But we see him with the use of transcendental knowledge. Also, this idea that we suffer because of forgetting Krishna is helped through this process of devotional service. Now, so how long are we doing for time? Oh, it's going quicker than I thought the time. So it's in Bhagavad Gita 5:25, in case anyone wants to go more into it. But it is said basically that through the boat of transcendental knowledge, we can cross this ocean of material suffering or distress. So the question for you all today is, what's in your boat? What's in your boat? This is the question. Because our process of devotional service is very personal to all of us. If you tell me that you cut your finger and I tell you it's because of your uncontrolled senses at that moment, maybe you'll even cry in that moment because it doesn't help. But each one of us, with the proper understanding, can help to get over our suffering. So just so we tie up what could be in our boat. What could be in the boat? Vedasara, what could be in the boat? You've already mentioned a few points.
I'm an eternal servant of Krishna.
I am a servant. So
Krishna is my best friend.
This is like our Hare Krishna affirmation, yeah? I am a servant of Krishna. What did the next one you said?
He's my best friend.
Who's my best friend? Say it again.
Krishna is my best friend.
Krishna is my best friend. The amount of times that devotees have come to me and said, Krishna must be so unhappy with me. I didn't do this. I said, are you joking? Krishna is so happy for that tiny amount of service that you do. Krishna is so happy when you come in front of him. Please do not believe we are unhappy, believing that Krishna is so unhappy. He's just waiting for that little part that we give. Okay, so Krishna is our best friend. And if any of you have a best friend who is a person, you will know as a best friend, you may have messed up. You may have messed up big time, as we say. You may have done something wrong. You go and say, I'm really sorry. And that best friend, out of love and affection, will be, okay, I've got it, I understand, I get it. If they're not a friend, then they'll be like, who are you? I mean, depending how, who get away from me, But a best friend will understand. So is this mentality that Krishna is our best friend. I put up two more before you go into it that you already said. In our boat could be transcendental knowledge. How can we get transcendental knowledge?
Shastra.
Stop it, Vedasara. For a moment. Who can I give, Nicole? How can we get transcendental knowledge? So back here is very quiet. Huh? How can we get transcendental knowledge?
Indem wir Gesellschaft suchen mit den
Gesellschaft. This association? Association, very important.
indem wir die Bücher lesen
Read books.
von Prabhupada,
I think Kishorikun has
indem wir
lived.
unser Leben versuchen zu ändern.
Hang on. She said to try to change our lives? Wow, okay, very deep. Try to change our lives. Kishorikun changed her life a lot. She's been here, I think, 9 years, maybe 10 years. And I think she's one of the few who comes to Srimad Bhagavatam class almost every day. So, unless she's sick, it's like every time you'll see Kishorikund here. That's a lot. 8 years, like to keep going. Try to change our lives. That's a very interesting one. As devotees, when we're practicing, we can get stuck in what we are maybe doing, and we can question the process. It's not working for me. It ain't working. I've tried it. I've been practicing for some years. Why is it not working? Why do I still feel so distressed? And often we can look back and think, what am I doing in my life? What's changed now? Do I go to class going, okay, I'll show my face, I'll make my appearance, I'll do my thing? Do we go to class with that first part of when we arrived as a visitor? I want to hear, I want to know a little bit more about spiritual life. When we chant and we're not in a retreat, what's happening? Like, okay, I gotta get up to 16 rounds, 1 round, done, 2 rounds, done, 3 rounds, okay, where was Krishna in my chanting? Where does it fade somehow? And I'm seeing this, looking at myself and then hearing from others that it's not as easy as it appears sometimes to keep going and to know, but sometimes instead of the modern day thing is to add more into our lives. Pack it all up. Pack in, go on, do some more service, push it all out. But it's not necessarily the answer to the problem. Sometimes it's just doing what you're doing, but better. So this answer to the first question, I don't have enough time, then wait. You may be like Dean, he's still working more or less full time, although being here. You have to slow down, just acknowledge where you're at. Sattva Gun is very much about being in a present moment. I'm here now. I'm trying not to think what I will do in 10 minutes, and I'm trying not to think what happened before. In this moment, let me see where I'm at with Krishna. If I'm not with Krishna, this is my opportunity to try to be with Krishna in this moment. In this moment when we're hearing, we are connecting to the Lord. Satchidananda Swami said that when we are hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna, what he's doing stops, this is from the Avashastra, and comes and sits. So at this moment, can we imagine that the Lord is sitting with us as we're trying to hear? And in that moment, in practical application, when Kishorikun mentioned is changing our lives, if it's working, then one can continue. But sometimes and regularly we should ask ourselves, what Satchidananda Swami puts this question, is my life making me more attached to Maya, or am I becoming more attached to Krishna? And what I mean in a devotee sense, more attached to Maya, is that do you feel this need to run away? Are you going to be one of these ones, temple is too hard? Temple life is hard, but is material life easy? I mean, I worked 10 years full time out there. That was so hard with no solution. Temple life is like hard but has a solution. It has a way forward. So in this moment, when we're talking of changing our lives, and I don't say this easy because I've been here 11 years, but there was a moment where I thought, I'm here at the perfect place for me. The Lord, in the form of Nrsingadev, speaks to me in my heart. But something is not working. What's not working? This for me, there's too much I've got no time. I'm running the whole day. I'm not peaceful. This devotee, they seem to pick a problem with me. I didn't do nothing. Why do they have a problem with me? Oh, it's too cold. Indian body. What's the problem? However, it's too much. There's too much. This battling of this too much was just coming to this point of not that I should. You want to say something to this one?
Which one?
Which point? About too much time. The suffering. Oh, wait a minute.
Less time.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I don't have, it's too, everything is too much for me. We've heard it many times from devotees. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's all too much.
Yeah.
Ich kann nicht mehr. Ich will nicht mehr.
Just something personal from me. When I experience that feeling or that state of being, I realize often that I totally depend only on myself. That I forget that Krishna is helping, or Krishna is the controller, or Krishna wants my best. I think in terms of me and mine, and that everything is on me, and that
I
so
have to deal with it,
important.
or that
Yeah.
I must deal with my problems.
Yeah.
They're my problems. I've got to deal with it. It's my issue. It could be both ways. It's not I'm so great, but it's like, oh, I'm so crap, and I have to deal with that. Oh, how can I go? I actually have always people on the second line of, what's the point? I'm useless anyway. I can't do it, but somehow I have to get through it, somewhere or other. Anyway, Prabhupada said material life is, full of distress. So there's like a resignation that comes in. This sort of resignation is sometimes not so helpful for our spiritual life. I go because of time. I run through unless Ramananda wants to say something. Not yet. Oh. Okay, so basically, let's do a pause, Chara, then you can say something. Transcendental knowledge, real transcendental knowledge will bring us closer to Krishna. It will also go into these questions of who I really am. I've also had it, I don't know about you, you've gone into a class and there's many important things that are there and that have been said. However, the next thing someone comes and says, oh, I have a problem. Often with me, especially when I was in the devotee care team, one-man team, was oh, I have a problem with that devotee, or they have a problem with me. And I would give a management type answer or emotional base because I have some training in sort of therapeutic skills. So like this, I would give an answer. And this went on for many years. And then when I had a health crisis a couple of years ago, I thought something is wrong here. They're coming and there is a devotee conflict. It's not working. And I've given an answer which would be applicable in outside life. So what is going on? And sometimes what's very interesting is that the spiritual answer for a question is very different than what the material answer will be. For example, also quote Satyananda Swami on devotee conflict. He goes a little bit in detail, but he said it is more important to be unified in Krishna consciousness than it is to be right. So you have a problem with somebody. And in most problems, both parties think they're right. It's not like, they're so wrong, they know it, and I'm right. Both parties in a conflict think they know the best answer. I've been in a million times, but of course, why can't they see it like this? It's obvious, or obviously not, right? I remember praying, there was a bigger problem that came here. And it felt like whatever I did, a particular devotee at that time would just have a problem or an issue. It's just so, okay, anything I did. And first I tried to be, at least on surface, humble about it. Okay, let's not go there. And then next I tried to be let's be reasonable, let's talk about it, let's try to find a solution. Still didn't work. And these solutions sometimes are enough and they do help. And next, I took to praying, Vandanam, yeah, so praying. So I prayed to the Lord, and it was very strange because these problems had gone to a high level. And at that time I was mid-30s and I never experienced that. I'd always managed somehow to get through life without actually any major conflicts. And I prayed and I felt, from Prabhupada, I felt just let that devotee do what they need to do. And I kept praying. And I also have Kshatriya background, so to say. So it was like ready. So I kept praying. I was just let that devotee do. And as I was praying, I got an image of Kurukshetra and Arjuna on the field. And as Arjuna is fighting, he is fighting those who are on the side of evil or of bad in that moment, who are acting at least in this way. So he is fighting really against things that are troubling. And if you look to the left or right, they are devotees. So why would I pick up my arrow and shoot another devotee? Because he's pointing the arrow at me. And in that moment I thought, let the arrow be pointed at me. I will not fight for this reason. And as I prayed, it was still the same answer, that I should just let that be. This person had some difficulties before. They needed to express what was needed. And it did come at a cost to myself, I was a little bit humiliated with what came out. But still I prayed and it felt like Shanti, peace, just let him do his thing. And after the expression was had, at that moment there was peace. There was peace. I was not so peaceful because my false ego stepped in and was like, hey up, like what happened? Why did this happen? But still to this day, this was many years ago, the prayers that came to the Lord was more, and I read this recently, this quote, it's more important to be unified in Krishna consciousness than to be right. In that moment, when I relinquished this need to be right, the Lord had something else. Possibly it was my karma. Possibly it was something to do with another life that I have no understanding of. But outwardly one could see nothing that I seemed to do explained such a heavy reaction. And sometimes you see this in life with other devotees. Oh my goodness, they have so much trouble, but they're such nice people. What is happening? The only part in that which could have maybe helped me at the time was like, yeah, so you've suffered, you cannot avoid the suffering, but think of Krishna. I remember at that time when it gets bad, one goes low, and on this point that Vedasara mentions, it's like, I have to deal with it. And we forget, as our Murari said, that Krishna is the controller. Krishna is the controller. He controls all that is acting and above us. When there is a problem and when we go to him through praying and other solutions, he can help us with that. So this was a practical one on that. When we are also absorbed with our minds on Krishna, we also get closer to him in this way. I hope that was okay. If there are any questions, you can approach me later, but I know we're running out of time. The last question I have, which is a little bit more lighter, is then, so this distress caused by extreme cold weather, how do you manage it to go out on marathon at minus 10 degrees? How do you manage it? What is the mentality? Charu, where's the microphone? Can you give it to Vedasara? Or if anybody else wants to speak on this. I think Ramananda, you also went on marathon. Vedasara is there. How to get over the suffering? It's cold, I can't do it.
Well, I come over it when I keep in mind what the benefit is of what I am doing. When I see what it is worth for.
What's it worth? What is it worth? That you win the marathon?
No, to give Krishna consciousness to people who maybe never had contact with it before, Krishna makes arrangements to meet certain people, that they come in contact again, that they get a book, that they can hear about Krishna, that their material life sooner or later will transform into Krishna conscious life.
Sooner or later, it was amazing. Basically preaching.
Yeah.
You go with the idea of preaching. Prabhupada also uses this term to overcome our suffering. He said that if you have got strong bhakti yoga, then you are not anymore in material body. You are free. You are in spiritual body. And I do think that sometimes when we have Sankirtan, it's extreme circumstances sometimes. And sometimes we had this vision of why always these quotes on Sankirtan, also about temple life is also important, also different areas. I think one level when you speak to Sankirtan devotees is that it takes a lot of determination to keep going out, a lot of willpower and prayers to the Lord to keep doing it, to keep going. I also have to say, to live and to continue serving the Lord on a daily basis also requires that willpower and service. But every aspect of devotional life is. But particular, as Sankirtan, we are also known as a Sankirtan temple. It was interesting to see because one has to have a lot of resolve to keep going, especially in summer. I heard in summertime it's easier to distribute in one sense, because it's warm, people are friendlier, so it goes in this level. Are there any questions at this moment in time? Because we have an open discussion, I hope that most things are covered. But if something comes up, because I can imagine, this verse was particularly on the pangs of material distress and suffering, so I'm sorry about that point. However, I do believe that this concept of suffering is something that takes a lot away from our path and our spiritual life. And if we can somehow find that shelter in the Lord when we are suffering, then it's very easy to help us overcome this problem. For example, if you're having a day where your mind is giving you a lot of trouble, but there's nothing majorly troubling you, if there is something that you have, I call it as a backup. So backup is when you're in a good space in time. You make a list of everything that helps you in spiritual life. So some of you might want to hear the pastimes of Krishna, some about Lord Chaitanya, some very famous kirtaniyas, or not so famous, but that inspire you. And you have these on backup. So on days where your mind is giving you a lot of trouble, you cannot, or you won't, or you're sick, you play this. So it's like the things that you do. It's like I try to, when I spoke to my mind before about Mangalati, it was like, come on, how amazing is it to come to Mangalati? That literally, sometimes literally feel like a level of ignorance just shifts from me, from the subtle body, so to say, when I attend Mangalati with some consciousness. Something is shifting. So when I have trained myself before, and that little voice squeaks in when I don't want to wake up, no more, things like this. So but try to have it in a loving way as well. Prabhupada has another lecture where he says that a real religious system means that we have learned to love God. If your heart is always crying for God, that is perfect religion. So the aim is that don't focus so much on the negative things that can pull you down, unless you really it helps you. Focus more on the positives that can instruct you in life. The chanting is a major aspect of that. There is a lecture where Prabhupada also goes into this topic, where this chanting and this chanting attentively can overcome many levels of suffering. I don't know if you've had days where you've got something happened and in the end you've chanted in the evening and the day hasn't often gone so well. Or other days where you've begun with the chanting, and chanting maybe not all your rounds but a few conscious rounds, and this can really help the rest of the day that goes on. Okay, Vedasar.
I have one question regarding mercy, because often Christians tell me on the street that we have nothing in hand, everything depends on the mercy of the Lord, and this is, as far as I know, not so right understanding, that it's also depending on our endeavor. But then it is said there is also the causeless mercy of the Lord. My question is there a difference between the mercy of the Lord and the causeless mercy of the Lord? And how do we, with our acting, influence the mercy of the Lord? Is it all all is lying in surrendering and faith and making friendship and developing and are eager to learn, and this is all, and then you get the full mercy? Or is it also that special souls get special mercy, or is there
Your Guru Maharaj, I don't know if it's his last CD, so Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, this great quote, I'm something like, "I'm not so great, but so much mercy carries me." And I think it's very amazing because, of course, Kadamba Kanana Maharaj is or was very great, you know, but so much mercy carries him, and one could see it. I would say, after hearing the tributes and other things, that one can also understand it by his dedication to the Lord, through his unending devotion and seva that he gave. There was mercy, whether it came to him naturally or it became because of it. It's both ways. I also feel because I'm just an ordinary person, that just being by Lord Nrsingadev, he's shown me how his causeless mercy comes. And sometimes I look, I'm like, I didn't do nothing, but he gives. When we render devotional service, naturally things change for us and we get service. Lord Chaitanya came and gave a lot of this causeless mercy. So this means mercy to anyone and everyone. Sometimes one can see Lord Chaitanya works through the Sankirtan book mission. You also give people, I think Ramananda distributed to somebody who had bottles of beer in his hand. He's now a very nice devotee. Don't mention his name, don't want to embarrass. But it's causeless mercy. If you're thinking, who should I give this mercy to? Be like, oh, this is a very pious person here. Let me go and knock on his door and see. But who comes to you on the street? Some level of mercy is happening at that time. Mercy that you are able to distribute. Mercy that person is there to receive that mercy. Even more merciful if they read it. Even more merciful if they become a devotee of the Lord. So it works, but how it works is very unusual. I am from an Indian background. I grew up with some learnings of Vaishnavism, but I was heading on a different track. I was like a career lady. I was going in a different world, but some mercy came. My mercy came through ill health, actually, in my early 20s. And then I became a devotee, but a lot of mercy came along that way, because if I thought of my own endeavors, I will do this, I will be, it doesn't work. Around 12 years ago, I prayed to the Lord and said, how does a person like me end up living in a place like this? It's just not possible. I'm not like these devotees. I'm just a working girl. He made it possible. I had to take the signs, and some people were a little shocked at that time, because nothing was externally wrong with my life, I had a good job, I had this. So at that time one understands, at least later, that is the mercy. So it's in both ways. As devotees we get a lot of mercy, right? Where we can experience. Sometimes it's good to think of the mercy that came. The first time you got a book, the first time some real awakening came with the Lord. So many times of mercy. And other times it came for no reason. Other times one can say it came because you tried, that you reached out to the Lord with your service. Certainly with Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, he spoke one time in a lecture that, I think someone asked me, is it that people are just born as devotees? When you look at people like Satchidananda Swami, Krishna Kshetra Swami, Kadamba, you think, oh, they were just born like pure devotees. And some people maybe came like this, but obviously it's also possible in this lifetime to become pure. And at the end, either one, whether you purified and became pure or you were, is irrelevant. The point is just that we strive in that direction. That always gave some hope and direction that we can get to that place where we're a little bit free from suffering. And you also as devotees, many things don't bother us as much as it does. Some things will really get us down, but some things might be like, yeah, okay, it's just a body now. Huh? I'm getting some aches. Huh? Is it okay? Thank you for your participation. Sorry that I went a little over. I hope there was something for all of you. All the best. If any of you get stuck on this, then please come to me. I don't want any of you feeling lost. Okay. All the best. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Hare Krishna.